Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 62 of the Defend Your Ground podcast. This is Ben, the executive director of the Blue Ribbon Coalition. I'm here today with Simone. We've had a little break from the podcast because Simone's had some life circumstances that have intervened and kept us busy. So, Simone,
Kept us
glad to
awake all
have
night.
Simone's been awake all night. We have two new guests. Simone, do you want to introduce your guest?
Yes, so I've got my baby Lachlan here with me. So if you hear crying, it's not Ben, it's her.
Yes, and so Lachlan is here, and the newest member of BRC. We're glad to have her here. But then we've also invited Seth Gaynor. He's from New Mexico, and we invited him on because he is our resident expert of an area in New Mexico called Valles Caldera. This is a preserve, is what it's called, run by the National Park Service in some spectacular areas of what's the mountain range out there, Seth? It's kind of west of Santa Fe and Albuquerque.
The Jemez Mountains.
Okay, the Jemez Mountains. And there's an open comment period right now from the National Park Service of how they want to manage this area. Seth, you've been advocating for more public access to this area for quite a long time. You put our Instagram account on blast on a regular basis to get our attention, and so we are listening. We want you to know that, and we want our listeners to also listen to what you have to say. So why don't you give us all sort of a quick, like 2 minute history of this area, why you care so much about it. My guess is a lot of the public just doesn't even know about this area, and they need to understand why this comment period is so important.
Yes, so the Valle Caldera National Preserve, let's go back to, it was a private ranch, and so it was run privately for 100 years. In the year 2000, it was bought by the federal government for $101 million. The last owners were the Dunnigans from Texas, and it was a cattle ranch at that point. So the federal government bought it in 2000. The agency that was put in charge was the Forest Service. And then they came up with an idea about running it kind of a private government sort of mix property. And so they called it the trust, the Valle Caldera Trust. And so the trust was run by 9 board members. They had a 15-year kind of time set aside that, hey, they needed to be productive, they need to make money, they need to do all this stuff to get it to where it was making money and all that good stuff.
When was that trust put in place?
In 2000.
Okay, when it was bought.
Yeah, when it was bought. And the Forest Service kind of, they were the underlying agency running it, but then the trust kind of took it over. And so the Forest Service was kind of set aside. So they're kind of the agency that ran it, but it really wasn't them. It was this board that ran it. And so they had 15 years to do it, to make it work. And it wasn't working for them liability wise. It was costing them way too much money because it was neither public. They didn't have those rules that they could get by. And because it wasn't government completely, they couldn't have the assistance from the federal government like they wanted. So they came in and there were groups lobbying to have it changed because they were not happy with how the trust was running it. And so a group came in and lobbied. They got some backing, some support, and in 2014 got it transitioned to the National Park Service. Congress changed it.
Okay. So a few quick questions. $100 million for this ranch. What was the size of this ranch?
So it's roughly 89,000 acres. So it's a good little chunk.
Yeah, and that was in year $2,000.
Yes.
Okay, and so if I understand correctly, like me, an American taxpayer, I paid money, $100 million, for the government to acquire this land, which was run in some sort of a public-private partnership with this trust. That 15-year initial period of that didn't go quite as planned, and so then they bailed out and handed it off to the National Park Service. Is that a fair assessment of how this has worked? And so then in 2015, Is the trust still involved now, or is this now fully owned and operated under the National Park Service's portfolio of properties, or how does this work?
So in 14, it was signed. And then from the end of 14 through 15 to October 2015 is when it fully transitioned to National Park Service.
Okay, now it's completely owned and operated by the National Park Service. Is the trust still in existence, or did it dissolve?
The Is the trust what? I'm sorry, say again.
Is it still in existence, or was it dissolved once the property turned over to the Park Service?
So that's the interesting part, because in the enabling legislation, they wrote in that they can run it as the quote unquote trust as long as there was no GMP, general management plan. So you may run it as the trust. So was it under National Park Service agency? Yes. But in the enabling legislation, you still had that clause saying you could get away with running it as the trust.
And so the action that's out for public comment right now, is that to create the GMP then that would put full management control away from the trust and into the Park Service?
That's correct. Yes, the
And
draft general management plan.
and that's what's out for public comment right now, correct? And Simone, we have an action alert on that. When is the deadline?
So the deadline for that is August 31st, which is a Sunday. Normally, we have until the following business day if a deadline falls on a weekend or a holiday. There's also a holiday on Monday, so we can assume that potentially the deadline is through August or September 2nd. However, when I have tried to call and confirm that, I have not been able to get through to anybody.
How many times have you tried calling?
Oh, I've tried this week each day like 2 or 3 times at different times. So I'll show you what I get when I call.
Yeah, let's get them on the phone. So you're
Maybe
calling the
they'll
park?
answer while
That
we're
would be
on the
great. So you're
podcast.
calling the Park Service?
I am calling. Yeah, let me just confirm the number here real quick. And man, if we can get them through right now, I'll take it. Let's see. Every time. That's what I've gotten. So then they also give a contact email. I've emailed that email address. I haven't gotten a response. And to be fair, they do give information for like the accessibility accommodation person. I don't remember what their job title is. It's not listed. And I've tried calling him, and to his credit, he did text me and ask if he could call me later. I haven't gotten that call back yet, but hopefully we get through to somebody and we can confirm when the deadline will actually be. But as of right now, we're under the assumption that it is August 1st. We're hoping that it'll actually be through September 2nd.
Well, I haven't heard that noise on a phone since the landline days.
Right? I'm like, I don't know if
Did you
it
call a
sounds like
fax machine or something?
Did they have the fax number
sounds
on
like
there?
a fax machine, or there's still like dial-up internet or something. So,
Where the
and
government?
I sent in the email, I said, I'm like, I think your number's just not working, but I don't know.
Okay. Well,
So we do have an open comment period for people to submit comments through, and I guess we'll just keep people posted on when the actual deadline is. But as of right now, plan for August 31st, just in case.
so get them in right away is, I guess, the takeaway from this. Maybe the government's listening. We'll find out. Seth, we put things in our public comment to give people a template, and people can send that. But we always encourage people to add their own reasons why they want something managed a different way. And so, talk to us about Valles Caldera and why the public should care about this area. What's your background with it? You seem to know more about this area than anyone I've talked to. What should the public know about what's at stake here with their advocacy and why they should fight for this?
So this is a beautiful, a gorgeous 89,000 acre property, beautiful streams, good mountain biking roads, like really good fly fishing along the streams. There's 3 main streams that people go to. That's probably the most visitors go fly fishing. That's probably what come up there. It's It's an old ranch. It's a lot of timber roads and old historic roads that go through there. And so there's just so many different places to go experience, explore your national park. And due to the restrictions that this manager's put on it, he's pretty much just giving you a couple hours to visit this very small section of the 89,000 acres. And then a select few can go a couple miles more down the road, but you're still limited with the amount of time that you're allowed on the national park site.
So
So when
you're
we're
limited
saying,
on the amount of time, you're limited on where you can go, and isn't it even how many people can go to?
Yes, he's limited to 35 permits a day.
And what are like group sizes? Like, can you have 40 people go in like underneath one permit?
It's one permit per vehicle. And so they don't allow oversized he doesn't allow oversized vehicles, so you couldn't even have one vehicle with 40 people in it. You could have 6 people per that one permit.
And so
okay,
it's restricted multiple ways.
and so I say I get a permit. I'm one of the lucky 35 that can go in there. I go in. What can I do in the amount of time they've given me to be there? How many fish can I catch?
So the fishing, like I said, is some of the best. And so you may be able to catch quite a few in that short amount of time. But due to the banker hours, you can't get in there in the morning when they're active, and you can't stay into the evening when, once again, they're feeding and active. So you're in the warmest part of the day where maybe the fish aren't as active, and so you aren't pulling in as many as maybe you could if you were allowed access early morning or late into the evening.
And is
And
there
have they
good
ever given a reason? Like, what is the justification for the restrictions?
The trust. The trust did it, we can do it. So they've just continued on with trust management. And with this general management plan, they plan to continue trust management.
And they're not even in the analysis, they're not analyzing additional permits or additional hours. Like they're not even looking at that as an option to expand access. I was shocked. I thought they would, when I saw that there was a draft, I was like, okay, they'll at least have like an alternative that looks at, additional access. But there's nothing. They're acting like that's not even a thing. That's all just going to continue on as normal. And that was surprising to me.
It really surprised me too. And like that seems like that's what we go to our national parks for, recreation, for these beautiful places. And if you're limited in how many can go and then the short amount of time you're limited to, how could that not be how you're going to manage going forward? So yes, it surprised me as well.
How much of the geographical area can I access with the amount of time that's allotted within the permit? 89,000 acres is big.
It is big, but again, they limit your road access to approximately 11 miles out, and then 3.5 miles to the east, and then 4 miles to the west. And so they call it the T. And so you have access for those 2 roads pretty much.
So based off
How
of those 2 roads, how many, like, what's the acreage you think that you're realistically able to access of the 89,000?
I don't know.
A small percentage, I would
Yeah, a
assume, though.
very small
What are they
percentage.
hiding on this 80,000 additional acres?
And being in New Mexico, I've heard that comment multiple times like, "Oh, Area 51, what's up in those mountains too?"
right? But there are other roads. They're just not open. Like, and I'm assuming they're like kind of maintained. Like, we wouldn't have to go and do a big disruption to the environment to allow more access. They could allow the public to go to more places in this area. They're just choosing not to. Is that correct?
That is correct. And he's giving reasons like they're not engineered for the public to drive on them because they were ranch roads, because they were timber roads. They weren't engineered that way, so we can't allow it.
The pictures of them, though, are, I mean, they're great roads.
Yeah, they're big, nice roads.
Like, they're obvious
Do
roads.
they spend money to maintain the roads that the public can't use?
So there is one road on the west side that they allow hunters to access, and that's approximately 6 miles of road. And that connects you to that T road that I was telling you about. So that gives them about 6 more miles of maintained, quote unquote, maintained road for them.
Okay. How much of the area have you seen?
I've
I mean,
seen
you've definitely
a
gone up in there more than most people. And so, yeah.
yeah, I've tried to explore every bit of that place that I can. And in my position prior, I was able to do that. And going through all those areas, you're like, this is spectacular. And why can't anybody else come up here? It's not really fair.
Yeah. Do they allow overnight camping?
The hunters get to overnight camp, they get to disperse camp and away from vehicles. And then they have a campground that they can go camp in as well during their hunt.
Yeah. Which honestly, like I support, if there's that can be a seasonal thing where there's a period of time where that's the use that gets to go use an area like this. But it feels like there should be more of that allowed when we're in the off season for hunting so that the public can go and enjoy this area if we used our tax dollars to acquire it. Seems like there are some casual uses like that could be allowed that wouldn't significantly impair the environment. I'm assuming, although it's a spectacular place, I don't know that it's probably comparable to other surrounding public lands that do allow for the same multiple use on a broader scale.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and so okay, well, so we have
Yeah.
an action alert, and we want people to get in there. I mean, what we're asking for, Simone, I'm assuming, is more permits so that more people can get into the area, that more of the roads be open so that people can explore and access more of the area, that there can be more allowable uses. I would think if I was a fisherman, I would want to see permits at different intervals of time to where I could actually go in and fish during a time when fish want to be caught. Talk to one thing you briefly mentioned. Who's the manager of this? Isn't there kind of some? I mean, I feel like there's some politics of how this place is run that the public should understand that is probably different than the normal career ladder that you find in the Park Service. Like, who's the person running this place right now?
So the superintendent now was the last executive director of the trust. And prior to that, he worked for a senator who kind of made or kind of presented the idea of this becoming public land. And so, in that whole, as the last executive director, he was helping with writing the enabling legislation for the National Park Service and how this was going to progress. The enabling legislation, he wrote in that the trust employees will then be granted NPS jobs, National Park Service jobs, with no prior experience. Obviously, they got first dibs on jobs. He got the first dib on becoming the manager. The superintendent is what the National Park Service calls those in charge of the national park sites. So he has been running it since before it became National Park Service. He was the executive director of the trust.
You mentioned that the trust had a hard time. I don't. Maybe I didn't fully understand, but you said it had some financial performance standards it was supposed to meet. It didn't meet those. Limiting to 35 people a day, I can't imagine that this park even covers the costs of the superintendent's salary. So this is a money sink for the American taxpayer unless they actually allow more recreation. Would that be correct to say?
Yes, and I think what they wanted was an 89,000 acre research plot, science research plot, and that wasn't going to make them money. I've read 2011 or 2013 was when they were like, okay, we'll hold the public's hand and have them come in, but make them pay a ton. Well, in 11 or 13 to 2014 or 15, when it was the year 15 years were up, that's not enough time to make a difference in that budget. So they paid themselves well and didn't allow public in, so they weren't making any money because of that.
And are the permits free or do they have to pay? Do the public have to pay for the few permits they allow?
So the permits themselves supposedly are free. These last 2 years, they went into rec.gov to pay a private person the $2 to reserve the spot.
Not
To
just a
reserve
private
the permit.
person, but a foreign defense contractor.
And so that was another thing they just jumped into. There was no public comment time for that. That was just the superintendent going, "Hey, this is what we're going to do." So we didn't have any say in that. He just said, "Well, I'm going to cut everybody's access." And prior to that, it was 35 at a time, which is still really silly. But at least you drive in a mile and go, "Hey, that was pretty," but I have to go somewhere else. So that didn't take somebody else's spot. Someone else could go enjoy their national park. Whereas now he's like, no, that's going to be it. Like someone just drove a quarter of a mile and said, I don't want to drive anymore on gravel dirt roads. So they're out a permit. Well, also, how many people didn't show up or no shows? I don't know. So those 89,000 acres, which that's not really what it is. It's just that the one, the two roads, like I was saying earlier. So there could be two people back there, not even the 35. So it's just a arbitrary thing that he started and is continuing with this general management plan.
Simone, are you aware of any other national park that limits access to 35 people a day?
35. I mean, there's permit systems, but not as restrictive as this that I've ever seen.
To an entire unit. It's I think Torweep in the Grand Canyon, that overlook. I can't
Mhm.
remember what they limited to. It might have been something like that, but that's just like one small
It's a small
campground
little,
almost.
yeah, it's like a little picnic area is all. Like it can't hold. It's not 89,000 acres.
Right.
Yeah. So that's
Like, could you imagine if they restricted Zion to 35 permits a day?
Yeah, and that,
yeah.
I
It's
think
nonsensical.
he's saying it's backcountry, which, like you guys know, that's just a restrictive term to keep us out. And so you bring that up with him, and he's like, "Oh no, that's backcountry." You go and talk to an employee right now, and they're like, "Oh, would you like to go into the backcountry?" And it's like, "No, I'm not going to drive into the backcountry, but I'm going to drive the road, and then I'm going to hike into the backcountry. I'm going to, go ride my bike on the bike trail, possibly in the backcountry." So it's just like you guys are constantly saying, it's just a term that he's using and has gotten away with for 15 years uh, uh, or
Are any
10
of the
years.
surrounding public lands like that? I mean, it's surrounded by Forest Service
It
land.
is Santa Fe National Forest.
Does the Santa Fe National Forest manage the adjacent lands as any sort of restrictive designation, like a wilderness, or do you know?
There is a national, it's the Jemez recreation area, and then just the regular,
Multiple
well,
use.
there's a small wilderness area just, I guess, north west of the area of the caldera. But those are just, yeah, very specific. That's a pretty small area.
And how long does it take you to get here from like Santa Fe or Albuquerque?
Probably a little over an hour from Santa Fe and maybe an hour and a half and maybe a little bit more from Albuquerque, depending where you're coming from in the Albuquerque metro area.
Is that probably where most visitors are coming from into this area?
Most likely, yeah, either of those.
Yeah.
And then we have our great community here of Los Alamos, and then on the other side is the small village of Jemez Springs.
Yep. Well, we'll have to make a trip, Simone, to
I mean,
Los
it looks
Alamos.
gorgeous. And it's not what you think of when you think of New Mexico. I think people are thinking, okay, it's, the Southwest, it's going to be desert. And that's not the case there. I mean, I would like to see it one day because it looks
Yeah.
beautiful.
What's the elevation of it? It's a high country alpine
Yeah,
ecosystem, right?
it goes up to 11 plus in the highest peak, Redondo Peak, and then down in the bowl, they call it, in that large valley up front, the Valle Grande, it's 8,500.
Okay. So we're at eight. So it's the high country. You're out of the heat. You're up in the greenery and in
Yes.
the water.
Yes.
And that's why it's such high value recreation land. You did mention that there's something being proposed here where if they go through with their, I believe, the preferred alternative, there are going to be even hiking trails and things that are going to be inaccessible. Or you, I believe when you spoke to me first about this, you said the way they're doing this doesn't make sense. There's going to be things that people want to access that they can't. I don't know if it's proposing to close specific roads or if there are roads that if they were open, make other recreation experiences available. Does that ring a bell, or am I misremembering this?
It kind of rings a bell. We may have been talking about certain roads that they are currently closing due to, quote unquote restoration. And then in that presentation that he did, he was talking about restoring more of these roads. And so maybe we were talking about that. But in the general management plan, in the preferred one, he's adding small sections here, small sections there that would give you the idea that I'm giving you more access, kind of like what he did in this past year and a half, where he allowed you to go from the entrance booth 1.7 miles more, and now at the end of the front country, he calls it. And so he's telling everybody, how great it is that he is allowing you to go all this way, whereas you're still in the same valley, you're still looking at the same thing. If I did that part, I got there and I did what was in that small area, what would I do tomorrow? Well,
Yeah.
I have 89,000 acres. Well, not if you were number 36 or whatever to not get the that last permit or something. So it's one of those things where it looks like he's again throwing in these little things going, no, I'm giving you guys so much, where in fact
You should be grateful.
there's so much here, and he is just barely allowing the public in.
Yeah. So, just recently, there have been at least two big policy changes for an area like this that we'd also usually are putting in our comments, the form comment we create for you. One of them is the Explore Act, was signed during the final days of the Biden presidency, and it requires agencies to explore and find ways to increase motorized access for recreation on the lands that they manage. Are we getting a gain out of this, or are we still getting, or what's the net level of access from this general management plan from what it was previously? Is it the same? Is it less? Is it more?
So since we didn't have anything to go off of, it was just a flyby. We'll worry about it in 10 years. It kind of looked like that's what this is going to be. We still don't know. So we'll see in 10 years how we're going to manage. And so again, it kind of we've been waiting for 10 years to get answers. And it didn't seem like this general management plan had any answers except, we want to pave roads and, put more parking lots in and more infrastructure. Whereas, there are 1,000 miles of road. There are currently, the 20 miles that you can drive there and back, there's 19, restrooms. So what you don't need all that. That's great and
Hold on.
everything.
There is 1,000 miles of roads in this 89,000 acres?
So there, because of the timber roads, he calls them, there are just miles and miles of road. Obviously, not all of them are usable right now due to the fires, so much dead and down everywhere. But they keep specific roads open, the admin roads that they call them, specific roads that everyone, like fire crews, will be using them right now. You have researchers, of course, that would use them. Specific ones would be used for hunters. Law enforcement are able to use them. So there are certain roads, not going to be the 1,000, but there are, according to the literature, stuff that the trust has written, that there's 1,000
Yeah.
to 1,200 miles of these roads.
And it
And what's
seemed
open
to
to the
me,
public now is like 20 miles.
Without a permit, you're allowed 3.
in the draft, they're pretty much just proposing to like solidify the access that's already there. Like, let's just make sure that there's a good parking lot for where you can already go. Let's just make sure there's a bathroom. They're not actually looking at expanding access. They're just saying, all right, we're going to make sure what you do have is just like set in stone.
Right.
And we're not expanding anything. And we're not even going to analyze expanding anything.
In his presentation for the general management plan, everything he said was, this is what we're doing. If, since there's
Right. It seems like their mind's already made up.
right. And so that's the other thing, is they're going to move that infrastructure up to the highway, which means you guys don't need to go any further. You just come here, look at our volcano, and then you leave.
Yeah, see
Well,
what we want you to see. Use the bathroom right here, park right
yeah,
here.
right
It's just
here.
this little, you can just stay right here and you're good.
And you're good. Yeah. You don't have to go into the 89,000 acres.
You
There's
don't get to
nothing
go and
there.
explore and
No,
actually go and be one with nature. Like that's not an option.
no. Yeah. And so it's so,
Unless you're a hunter.
of course, yes. And then you get unlimited access day and night. And then, go enjoy yourself.
So with the hunting, do you know? So obviously they have to have a tag. How many people can go with them, like to go and hunt? Is it still just one vehicle per tag?
You're allowed one vehicle per tag, and then you're allowed one vehicle pulling a stock trailer. So that's another way to add up who is coming onto the preserve. But you can fit 6 people in a vehicle, so that's what you would get if you don't have stock. If you have stock, then you can have the one other vehicle with your stock.
Yeah. So the other act I was going to talk about is or I guess this is an executive order. President Trump signed the Make America Beautiful Again executive order. And it does call on the Park Service and other agencies to also like promote motorized recreation, but all forms of recreation, um, and to increase that. I just don't feel like this feels like a plan that isn't in alignment with the current administration's priorities. Do you get the sense that anybody in the administration even cares, or are they kind of like, well, it's New Mexico, so we don't?
I've exactly right. I've felt that since getting here in 2018. Like, it's still like, where in New Mexico, is that a state? And so it's, is anybody like noticing us? Is there any, like, how is there no accountability here? And then somebody has made enough of an issue of it that regional director did bring in or said that the bandolier superintendent is now over Jorge, the superintendent here. And has that made a difference in these last couple of years? No. Again, if right next door we can't have accountability, I don't think they would care less in DC.
Well, those are all things we can ask for and put in our comments, which we have a couple days left. I mean, we're recording this on we're August 28th, so we have 3 days, right, Simone? Technically,
Hopefully a few more. We'll see though.
but if we can get the fax machine to pick up the phone, maybe we can find out if they're offering extensions over the holiday weekend, which is standard agency practice. Well, Seth, we appreciate you taking the time to educate people. I know you've been doing that a lot there's an Instagram page called Free Valles Caldera, which posts very regular content, lets you see what is up in this area, what we the public are getting really cut off from being able to access and use, even though our taxpayers are funding quite a bit of money to have the government own and manage this land. So we want everybody to go get their comments in. Let's stick up for our friends in New Mexico. Make plans to come visit. I don't know that Valles Caldera is on people's bucket lists of National Park Service managed lands that they should go visit, but apparently if you get a permit, you're going to have the whole place to yourself. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. And that's the other part I don't like about permits like this, is it just really restricts who can actually go experience it. So it limits the number of people who care about an area and who will want to be part of the effort to want to preserve it and have it be part of our public land benefits that we get. So hopefully we'll get the Park Service to consider a more expansive general management plan than what they're currently proposing. That's what I think would be in alignment with the current administration's priorities. Seth, any last words of what you want our listeners to do as they go and advocate for access to this area?
Well, I would just say it's for everybody. So everyone should have access. And so yeah, it's not just fighting for ourselves, like it's fighting for everybody. So yeah, just make your comments with Blue Ribbon Coalition. They make it really easy. Just click on it and make a quick comment. Let them know, because yeah, this is our land and we should have access to it. And thank you so much for putting this effort in, guys. And yeah, thanks again.
Yeah, thanks for bringing this one to our radar, and we'll go do a good solid last minute push for it. We have been putting it in our newsletter the last few weeks. I suspect we've gotten a few hundred comments in already, but let's make that a few thousand. Let's really make our voices heard and get these public lands open. So thank you, everybody. We'll be back again more regularly now that Simone's back in the saddle. There's a lot that's been going on. We have a lot to update people on, but this was our top priority right now coming out of a break period, and we'll spread the word. We'll post this on social media. So we obviously want you to follow us at Blue Ribbon Coalition, but is Free Valles Caldera, that's also an important account to follow on Instagram. Anywhere else that people should be getting information, or is that going to cover it for this area?
That'll probably cover it, either Facebook or Instagram. Instagram is
Perfect.
better.
Well, we'll put the handles to that in the show notes to this on the podcast description, and hopefully people will get engaged and help share the content that's being disseminated around this so that this can get on people's radar. So thank you. Defend your ground, and we will be back next week with more content.